Okay, today we're going to make the 3D frame box, and the first thing you might want to do if you're using a Cricut and not a laser cutter is test cut, because this is 2mm thick chipboard, the Cricut heavy chipboard. I cut this with the knife blade on my Cricut machine, and it did it fine. So it can be done, you just need to make sure your knife blade is sharp and you've stuck the chipboard down well and you've got a nice sticky mat. So once I knew the prototype worked fine, I cut this on my Cricut. I also used the pen to write the labels for me. If you're doing this on a laser cutter, you could change the text to an engrave line, and then it would do that to make your pieces easier to identify. Because this is going to be the hanging part where the weight of the frame is suspended, I'm going to reinforce the tops of these holes on both sides with super glue, and that just helps bond the layers. Depending on what material you're using, if you used wood you wouldn't need to do this. This is 2mm thick chipboard, as I said, the Cricut chipboard. It's kind of a layered product, so I think it benefits from some additional reinforcing. And it will soak in. And I'm going to do the other side as well. And then we'll leave that to dry. Whilst that's drying, we're going to take our inner back wall and the middle back wall, and we're going to stick the middle back wall onto the inner back wall. And then when the outer back wall has dried, the super glue, we'll stick that over the top. So outer, middle and inner. And what this will do will form a really nice strong structure when you're hanging this on the wall. And the point of these is to give the screw head or the picture hook somewhere to go when it's gone through this slot here. And that means when you hang this on the wall, it will hang sort of nice and straight and won't push it away from the wall, or it'll minimize that. So that's why we're doing the sort of holes are in the biggest holes are in the middle, and then the typical hooks holes there are on the outside, and then we'd have a 3-layer thick back wall. Make sure not to put the glue where the holes are, so let's put it on here first. Make sure all the edges are lined up, and then I like to place this underneath something heavy while it dries. Once that has set, then you just take your outer piece. I'm going to flip it over at this stage so that the writing isn't on the back, and I'll glue that down like so. And again, make sure not to put the glue over the holes. And again, put that to dry under something heavy. Next, we're going to take one of our side pieces, and it's good to have some nice weighted pieces with right angles. These are called 1, 2, 3 blocks. You can get them on Amazon. I've also got this handy offcut from a piece of worktop that I was having fitted in my kitchen. And then this is the dried now and pressed back 3 layers. Make sure you turn it over so that the hook holes are at the back. And what we're going to do is glue this side piece on to the side, not on top of, but sort of coming in from the side. And then I will be using the right angle pieces to ensure that that dries nice and upright. So get the glue, and the glue is going to go along this edge here of the back piece. The holes are at the top and at the back, although it doesn't really matter for this whether the holes are at the top or the bottom. And then I'm going to put my writing on the outside in case I want to paint the inside, lining up the top and the bottom edges. It needs to be directly in line, so not sticking out either side. I'm going to bring that right angle in there and then use my 1, 2, 3 blocks to make sure that it's perpendicular. And we leave that to set. You'll then do the exact same thing with the other side, putting it onto the outside edge, and use your blocks again to keep it upright while it dries. Once your sides have dried, we're going to put the base and the top on. So you just want to put glue along these 3 edges. Take the base piece, line it up with the bottom edges, and it goes on this way rather than top down. So we push it onto the bottom, making sure it's lined up on the left and the right, and then we'll bring it up and stick it to the uprights of the sides, and then just check that everything's in alignment. You might need a little bit of masking tape to hold the top corners square. And then use our square edges again to push in from the bottom and make sure that there aren't any gaps. And then once the base is reasonably well set, we're going to turn it around and do the same with the top piece. And then you can either use your right angled pieces again to push in at the bottom. What I like to do is actually turn this that way up and put weights on the top, and then that ensures that the top and the bottom are squishing onto the side pieces. So we'll turn that up now, and then I'll get my weights and put it along the edges that I've just glued, and it will push them down. And then I'll leave that for a good few hours now for everything to set up. Okay, so the basic box is complete and dry. The glue has set. We've got the holes on the back where we want them, and because we've got 3 layers thick at the back, it's nice and strong. There's a couple of things you might want to do to strengthen it up even further. Sometimes you'll have seen me in my other videos, I run a bead of super glue along these internal joints, and that adds quite a lot of strength. But super glue can dry shiny and can create almost like a little curved corner rather than a sharp corner. So depending on how you're decorating, you might not want to do that. There's another product that comes on a roll, and it has a sort of score line down it, and you can glue that along the edges like that, and that is really good at adding strength to your structure. And you can take it around the corners if you want to slice it, and then cut a 45-degree angle out, and it would go round there as well. Or you could just do the strips like that. Once you've done that, you probably would want to decorate the outside of your frame, but you might have wanted to do that anyway. And the other thing that you can do is have a frame. Now there's two frames that come in this SVG file. One is an inner frame and one is an outer frame. The inner frame, which I haven't cut for this particular project, fits in the side like that, and it fits inside all four sides. And then obviously if you glue that, that stops any of the bowing. This one is slightly larger. This is the outer frame. I kind of liked that look where you've just got an overhang. So if it was hanging on the wall, I don't know if I've got quite enough room here to get the picture of the depth. You just see that overhang, and I quite like that effect. Also, you can hinge it then. Because the inner frame is in, that would be harder to hinge. But the outer frame, you can put some hinges, say on this side, and the frame hides the hinge, and then you can open it to access inside. And you could also put some clear plexi sheet or acrylic in there then to make it dust free. So you need to decide whether you kind of want this sort of streamlined hinge frame on the inside or the overlapping frame, and whether you want to hinge it or not. And if you just glued that on, that would also be quite strong. I would recommend decorating before you put either frame on. Just it's easier to get up to these edges, whereas if you put a frame on, it's much harder. Generally, I like to decorate my structures before I build them as well. You'll have seen me do that many times. I just thought for this one, I'd just go straight in and show you the full completed undecorated build before we get into decorating. So that is it. That's your basic 3D frame box with hangers on. And you might go, why are there 3 hangers on the back? Depending on what you have in here, the box might weigh slightly more on one side or the other. And so we thought, if it's even, you could just have one hook. If it's slightly uneven, then you can use 2, and you can use a screw or a hook here, and it will disappear inside. If you can see, that kind of goes in there and around. So as long as the screw head fits this large bit, and then the sort of body of the screw is no larger than that, which is 5mm across, then they will locate in there and be very secure. You could also use picture hooks or wire, and just one if you want to. So you've got the options there. So that is the end of this construction, and then the next part will be decorating this. You can see I have now decorated this. I used just regular household wall emulsion paint for this wall and the ceiling, and I used that paint to paint the furniture and the fire surround too. Scrapbook paper that I often use for the floor and the wall. Craft board strips to create the faux baseboard and coving, that's skirting boards and moulding. And then we used the period door SVG and frame surround. I still need to put a door handle on there. The chimney breast and hearth SVG, and the fire surround and overmantel mirror SVG, and then the display unit. So they all fit in there, and obviously it's up to you whatever colour or decor scheme you would like to do. I'm going for a nice sort of Edwardian, Victorian, cosy drawing room theme here, I think. And it's nice and sturdy but not too heavy, so I will show you it hung up when it's finished. So a quick way to cover the outside edges if you have decided to reinforce them with tape. or a simple way, is you could just put glue over this whole surface, and you have to do one surface at a time, and then just get your sheet of Cricut craft board, and you would line it up with, say, this straight edge and that straight edge. And I would probably do this the other way up, so this was on my bench like that, and then I would put some weights inside just to sort of push the ceiling or floor or sidewall onto that craft board. And then once it's dried, you could just take a craft knife and cut round the edges, and then you would do the same then for each side in turn, and then that will cover each of those, and then you wouldn't have any kind of gaps at the edge. Probably simpler to do that than measure everything and recreate every rectangle in Design Space. You don't really need to do that. So to show you how to use the templates today, we're using a mock-up with this stand that Rod kindly built for me for my apothecary clock build. So if you wouldn't mind taking that off, please, darling. We're just going to use the same stand here to show you how to use the template, and imagine this was your wall. So I've cut the template on the Cricut. You need to remember to change the text at the top there to draw, and then it will draw that and then cut the template. And the top here is where the top of your heart-shaped shelf will be, and then this is where the screw holes are, and you just need to decide if you want the one hole in the middle or the two on the outer. So if we can do the two outer ones, please, Rod. And you could use a spirit level along the top here, obviously if you were doing it properly on a wall that you were going to look at every day. But this is just for demonstration purposes. So we're going to mark up where we're either going to put a screw in or a drill, depending on the surface that you're actually securing it to. And if you wouldn't mind holding that, please, babe. We're just going to show you here. This is just a random screw we've got, and you just want to make sure that it fits in this hole, the big one, and then as it goes up, it doesn't pull through the top of the slot there. So it's bigger there to get the screw head in, or the picture hook, and make sure that it doesn't pull through. So that's what we're aiming at there. And then if you could screw those in, please, darling. Rod's using a bradawl first, just to help the screw get started. And then once you've got the screw in the wall, if you find that it doesn't locate easily, you might want to screw the screws out a little bit, or if you find it pushes it too far off the wall, you might want to screw the screws in a bit. So that gap there is quite crucial. You want the gap at least as thick as the chipboard that we've used in this instance, which is 2mm. And then ideally get them both the same, and then hopefully hang them on. It's a little bit tricky, like hanging any picture. Might need a little adjustment. And then they should slot down. Awesome. And that's it.